Um, I guess for you, Nashwa, it was quite easy to find people interested in cats and their eating habits.
It's not just being easy. It's about finding an entry point, so to speak, to attract the attention of people. So you can relate to people, you can relate the topic to people if you ask them, for instance, how many of you have cats? And if you get a response, and of course you will, because lots of people have cats, then you've caught their attention. And obviously people want to know
Learn
about
more.
different things. Yeah, it's not just cats. I think in every scientific topic, people are willing to learn more, but if you put it to them in layman's terms and in terms that they could understand.
And how did you manage with your 3 minutes?
Well, I prepared obviously for it in advance. So I prepared as if I was going to prepare for a 1-hour lecture. So I split the information into 3 slides, and I thought, okay, I'll talk about each slide in 1 minute. And that was it. But obviously don't use the slides, it's just to give you an image in your head to speak from. But you have to be spontaneous, you don't want to memorize things, you have to be just yourself.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Hazem? What was the idea you wanted to present in this competition? Or actually the idea you presented already?
Well, I agree with Nashwa on one point that science is really not detached from life, because what science does is that it examines certain parts of life, and it has to be interesting to people, they just don't know it. But because it explains their lives, it explains things that are very relevant to each person's lives. So, for example, in my presentation, the second one, I was talking about a very complicated topic, computational neuroscience, which is basically about replicating neural networks on computers. Sounds very big and very complicated, but when you communicate it in a way that is very relevant to people, basically it's about putting your minds on CDs and computers and see how it would work. That's something they can relate easily to and they can be intrigued by. And
I'm intrigued. I want to know more about it. What does it mean? I mean, is it how we are processing our thinking, the thinking process?
Exactly.
And you've translated that into a computerized system, using the language of the computer?
Not me personally, but that's what computational neuroscience is about, and that's my area of interest. So yes, how to actually mimic what's going on in our brains and our networks. The brain is made up of networks on computers, and watch it work in action.
Is that what they use in the new robotic systems that actually interact with people? That's the same
it's
scientific
close
idea.
to it. It's not exactly it, because these systems use artificial intelligence, which doesn't have to replicate the human systems exactly, although it has to give the same function eventually. But it is a parallel domain. I think one of the important things that really work with the Egyptian audience is nice joke, because the Egyptian audience loves to laugh. So to start your presentation with a joke or something that is very attractive or catchy, very relevant, will always be a good point.
Oh, wow, that's very true, because we as a people like to laugh. We have Bethel. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First of all, we are very proud to have such young guys. And I'd like to ask Hazem, what are the benefits of having such a competition in Egypt?
All right, thank you, Bethel.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, I think this competition is very interesting, because it's throwing or it's focusing the attention on the young researchers and the young scientists, and that is a very, very promising and important sector in the scientific community, because a lot of the future prospects are laying in their hands. So it's giving them a due importance and attention. And it's also bridging the gap that Mohammed has explained earlier, and it's very important to bridge that gap, because we need funds into the scientific research in Egypt, and to do that we need people to be aware of what it can give us, what it can offer the society.
This is very true, and actually this is one of the main objectives of the FameLab in general, allowing the young scientists to be heard, encouraging them to actually communicate their idea not only to the scientific community per se, but to the entire public at large. For you personally, Nashwa, you've already been into the academic life as an associate professor, and you've been involved with a lot of doctors and scientists, and indeed they always get the chance to have this exposure in international conferences, in their own researches. How do you feel, you personally, the benefit of such a competition, having had the chance to have this, extra mile that other professors have?
Well, I think it's when you're communicating science to scientists, it's quite different because they're more critical of what you're saying, and they have a background of, usually when you go to a conference, it's specialized. So they have already a proper background on what you're talking about. When you're communicating to people, the benefit, in my opinion, is you can't separate science from the people, because people eventually will have a say in what you're saying, in what you're offering them. So they can stop research from happening, and they can actually provide funding for research that they are interested in.
Quite interesting. I mean, that's a very powerful tool. If it really does happen in our society, it would be quite interesting. We have another caller. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Shitu Ibrahim Bello from Nigeria.
Welcome, sir.
My question is now used, you have been educated regarding computer.
I'm not sure I
Now,
got your question.
what are you doing to help those who cannot able to afford the computer, more especially those who are not rich family? Because computer, sometimes you find it with rich family in the science subject. Thank you very much. From Sheikh Ibrahim Bello from Kuyambana, from area Kaduna State, Nigeria. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you. Well, I think from what I gathered is that he's asking what can be done for the people who don't have the resources to get the necessary elements to be able to participate. And I would say, actually, this whole thing is a civil society initiative that has been initiated to help or go line in line with Egypt's efforts to actually encourage the young youth and support the government in their efforts to advance science and scientists, and to build a culture that understands basically and supports the positive role that science can play in our community. This has been a funded program, as we've said at the beginning, by the British Council and the Research, Development and Innovation Program. It has been going on since 2005 all over Europe, and recently it has been introduced in Egypt as the one and only Middle Eastern, African, North African country, and also in China, that is representative of Asia. But I would gather that it's going to expand, and the exposure would definitely reach elsewhere, and we sure hope that Nigeria will be one of the beneficiaries of this program very soon. Thank you very much for calling indeed. Okay, back to our discussion, but first we want to mention that those FameLab preparatory meetings and the competition and the introduction about the project has been actually happening in several places all over Egypt. This competition was not only to the Caireans, as we can see, of course, Nashwa is a representative from Asyut, and we also had participants from Alexandria. So we'll check out a quick report about this event, and we'll be back to discuss more with our finalists and contestants.